I never believed in the supernatural. At least, I didn't until I moved into my grandmother's old house. The place was a relic of a bygone era, complete with creaky floorboards, dusty corners, and an attic that I had always been warned to avoid. But curiosity, as it often does, got the better of me. The attic was accessible via a narrow, winding staircase that seemed to groan with every step I took. The door at the top was heavy, its wood splintered and old. When I finally forced it open, I was met with a stifling air that smelled of mothballs and mildew. The light from my flashlight revealed cobwebs and forgotten furniture draped in sheets. But one item stood out, a doll sitting in the center of the room. It was a porcelain doll with hauntingly lifelike features. A porcelain face, glassy eyes that seemed to follow me, and tiny, intricately painted lips that curled into an unsettling smile. I'd never seen anything quite like it. I told myself it was just an old toy, but as I turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. Later that night, I heard a faint, rhythmic scratching coming from the attic. It was so faint, I wondered if I had imagined it. But the noise continued, growing louder with each passing minute. My mind raced through horror movie tropes, but I forced myself to go up and check. The attic was empty except for the doll. It was now in a different position, its head turned slightly, eyes still fixed on the spot where I stood. My heart pounded as I grabbed it and examined it closely. The doll's dress was immaculate, almost too clean for something so old. I set it back down and left, determined to get some sleep. That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the doll's face, its eyes boring into me. I kept hearing that scratching noise, more insistent now. I tried to ignore it, but the sound seemed to come from directly above me, in the attic. I told myself it was just old house noises, but the scratching was joined by a faint, eerie whispering. Desperation drove me to the attic again. I climbed the stairs, flashlight in hand, and was startled to find the doll gone. I searched frantically, but the room was empty. I was about to turn back when I noticed a small, door-sized hatch in the floor, something I hadn't seen before. The whispers grew louder, and the scratching became a frantic clawing. I opened the hatch with trembling hands. Underneath, I found a small, hidden compartment. Inside was an old, tattered journal, the pages yellowed with age. I read through it and my blood ran cold. The entries described the doll as a vessel for something malevolent. It had belonged to a child who had died under mysterious circumstances, and the doll was said to harbor her restless spirit. The last entry was a desperate plea. If you find this, burn the doll. Do not let it look at you. It feeds on fear, and it will not rest until it has taken yours. Just then, the scratching returned, more furious than ever. I turned around, and the doll was back in the center of the attic, its eyes still locked onto me. I grabbed the doll, trying to remember the journal's warning. The doll felt unnaturally warm in my hands. I raced downstairs, heart pounding, and threw the doll into the fireplace. As it burned, I heard a blood-curdling scream from above, echoing through the house. The flames roared, and I watched in horror as the doll's face twisted in agony before disintegrating into ash. The house fell silent. Exhausted, I collapsed on the couch, but sleep was still elusive. As I drifted into a restless slumber, I could still hear the faintest whisper of that scratching sound, as if it was coming from inside my own mind. I moved out the next day, but the scratching never stopped. Every time I close my eyes, I see the doll's gaze, a reminder of the evil that lurks when you least expect it. I left the house, but I took something with me, an unshakable fear that whatever was in that doll didn't stay in the attic. It followed me, always watching, always waiting. I thought leaving the house would bring me peace, but the sense of dread never fully left. I was haunted by the doll's gaze, replaying its eerie smile and those cold, lifelike eyes in my mind. I tried to go about my daily life, but every shadow seemed to harbor a sinister presence. I avoided the attic, convinced that whatever was left of the doll was still trying to reach me. My nights were plagued by nightmares. I dreamt of the attic, the doll's eyes following me with relentless intensity. In my dreams, The doll would sometimes transform into a grotesque, distorted version of itself, its porcelain face cracking and melting into something far more sinister. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the echoes of that scratching sound reverberating in my ears. No matter how much I tried to convince myself it was just a bad dream, the fear felt real and palpable. I decided to investigate further, hoping to understand what had happened. I found records of the original owner of the doll, a girl named Emily who had died under tragic and mysterious circumstances. Her family had been plagued by strange occurrences and unsettling events. It seemed that Emily's spirit had never found peace, and the doll had become a conduit for her lingering torment. The more I learned, the clearer it became that the doll was not just a toy but a vessel for something far more malevolent. As weeks turned into months, I noticed strange things happening around me. Objects would move on their own, and I'd hear whispers even when I was alone. Friends and family started to notice my erratic behavior. They saw the anxiety in my eyes, the way I would flinch at sudden noises. They didn't believe me when I told them about the doll, dismissing it as the stress of moving and dealing with an old house. But I knew the truth. Something had followed me, and it was feeding on my fear. One particularly harrowing night, I found myself sitting in a darkened room, unable to sleep. The scratching noise returned, louder and more aggressive than ever. I felt a cold breeze on the back of my neck, and the whispering seemed to come from all around me. Desperate, I grabbed a candle and tried to illuminate the room, but the shadows seemed to grow thicker, almost alive. I could feel the presence, almost tangible in its malevolence. I realized then that the doll's curse had not ended with its destruction. It had merely transferred to me, a relentless specter of my own making, ensuring that I would never truly escape the horror.